What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today I want to continue to look at positions that I think are going to be of high priority as we continue to build up this roster for the 2026 edition of the Green and White. We've talked about wide receiver, we've talked about maintaining strength on the offensive line, we've talked about the back end and the secondary at safety, and I do think all of those positions are important, but one that is definitely going to be addressed one way or another is edge rusher. The Jets need to get more pressure on the quarterback. And by the way, thank you to everybody who's watching all of those episodes, liking those episodes, and subscribing to the Jets Latest channel. Remember to tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. But listen, edge rusher, getting pressure on the quarterback can really do a lot, right? Not only is it important, but it can create turnovers, something that the Jets obviously did not do a lot last year. First of all, let me tell you about how it was a down year for the Jets in terms of getting pressure. They only had 26 sacks this year, second worst in the NFL. They only had 137 quarterback pressures, second worst in the NFL. Their pressure rate was 23.7 as a team. Remember that number. They only hit the quarterback 58 times. By contrast, the Broncos, the Seahawks, teams that were the one seed in their conferences, teams that are hosting championship games this weekend, they were both tied for second in the NFL with a pressure rate of 34.2 compared to our 23.7, okay? Obviously, getting pressure can correlate to being a fearsome defense, to stifling and turning the ball over, which is huge. Will McDonald had a decent year. He had 8 sacks, but nobody else on the team had more than 4. Juwan Briggs had that 4. And also Jermaine Johnson, a guy who I still do believe is a good player and a good edge rusher, only had 3 sacks. Only had 4 quarterback hits in 14 games. Remember, in his last healthy year, he did have 7.5 sacks. And I remember at the beginning of this year saying that I really wanted to see what a full year of Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson could do together. I think part of the issue, though, is they were doing it in Steve Wilks' scheme. And remember, there was a lot of buzz. The idea of like not letting players make plays, just trusting the scheme. I really believe McDonald and Jermaine Johnson were key among that and kind of losing faith in them. So I do still think that Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald are good edge rushers. I think they can be a good tandem. And we see, like I mentioned, like the Houston Texans with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, or the Broncos with Benito, right? Like having both of them are important. And I like those two of them, but I think the Jets this offseason are going to get a true stud somewhere. And one of the first places it can be is with that number 2 overall pick. Here on Jets Latest, I've always been saying that I don't think it was going to be a quarterback, that I think it could be an edge rusher. I have talked about Ruben Bain Jr. out of Miami, but there is someone else that I want to highlight here today as well. First of all, yes, Ruben Bain is regarded as one of the best edge rushers. I would not be mad at Ruben Bain Jr. at number 2 overall. He had 8.5 sacks. He had 13 tackles for loss. He's had another 4 sacks in the college football playoff. Stud. And I like that he's being coached by Jason Taylor at Miami, right? And the connections with the Jets for Jason Taylor, who has said nothing but great things. But you also need to know about David Bailey, okay, out of Texas Tech. This guy was absolutely ridiculous. He had 15.5 sacks in 15 games for Texas Tech this year. He had a pressure rate by himself of 22.1% over the last 3 seasons. And that favors comparably to some of the biggest edge rushers that have come out of college and been productive in the NFL over the last few years. I'm talking about a better pressure rate than Will Anderson in Houston, than Jared Verse, than Abdul Carter, all who have been very prized prospects and have translated to the NFL level. He also had a 93.4 pass rushing grade this year from PFF. Those kind of stats are absolutely eye-popping, okay? Quick burst, long arms, has all of the moves. So David Bailey is another name of note. Him and Ruben Bain are 2 potential targets at number 2. And another thing you could think about is like, do they want to get cute? Right? And maybe I've heard some people talk about trading down. Could the Jets trade down from number 2? I wouldn't do that unless I'm talking about trading down to like number 4 or 5 overall, where you can still make sure you can get a Bain or Bailey or even like a Reese out of Ohio State, right? I would not trade to compromise my ability to get this stud edge rusher. I believe at number 2, unless they trade down to 4 or 5, the pick is either Bane or Bailey. I do believe that is going to be it. I like them both. I think Ruben Bane would be great, but Bailey is really coming on and getting on the radar on a lot of people's kind of projections and rankings as we head into the draft, and would be a great compliment to add to a Will McDonald, to a Jermaine Johnson, to get more pressure for the Jets in 2026. The other way they can go about it is in the free agency route, right? You can always decide to spend money. And remember, the Jets do have a ton of cap space. They have, I think, the 4th most cap space this year. So splurging and getting a guy in free agency would not be a bad idea either. There are some like name brand guys like a Trey Hendrickson, a Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. I don't like those guys because they're past 30. And I don't want to do this for the most part. And you've seen that Glenn and Muji, they want young guys who are entering their prime who can build. And there are some of those that I'd like to highlight, okay? First off is Odafe Owe. This kid is a stud, only 27 years old, was with the Ravens, then moved to the Chargers this year, had 8 sacks and 47 pressures on only 353 pass rush snaps. That's a 13% pressure rate, okay? By comparison, Will McDonald was only around 11%. Jermaine Johnson was around 9%. So Owe pressures even more. Had a huge playoff game against the New England Patriots as well. He might command $15-20 million. So that would be a splurge option. There are others. Arden Key from the Titans, 11% pass pressure rate. Kwity Paye for the Colts, around the 10% pressure rate. AJ Epinesa from the division rival Buffalo Bills had about a 12% pressure rate. These are guys that would be comparable, if not more productive, more effective than Will McDonald and or Jermaine Johnson. So I do think that is a way to go as well. And remember, okay, free agency happens before the draft. So this will once again be kind of a tell on which way the Jets are going. I think they might, like I said with safety earlier in the week, right? How they might sign a veteran and draft thin mints in the middle of the 2nd round. I think edge rusher, because to address this defense, right, we really need to address this defense. And to do it in the back end with the safety is a priority. To do it up front and get more pressure is the other priority. I would not be surprised if, just like I said with safety, that the way the Jets will do it is to sign a guy and draft a true elite stud with number 2 overall. That's the way I think we're doing it. If they're going to spend money on an Owe, I would love it. But if they go ahead and sign an Arden Key, sign a Kwity Paye, and then also draft a Bailey with number 2 overall, this pass rush for the Jets will be violently different. And remember, the pressure rate is huge. Look at what Seattle has done. Look at what Houston has done. Look at what Denver has done and how that translates to deep runs in the playoffs. So that's where I think we're going to generate some more pressure. Hopefully a new DC and a scheme helps guys like Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald, but adding a Bane or a Bailey at number 2 overall, signing a guy like a Kwity Paye, or a Arden Key in free agency will really revamp this pass rush and get us maybe closer to the days of the New York Sack Exchange. So that'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Again, thank you to the 2,700 of you who have subscribed to the channel, who consistently watch these videos, like these videos. I really appreciate you guys engaging with me in the comments. And tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. Let's see what some of you Jets Latest insiders and regulars have to say. Stevie Peugeot at 6307 says, build the team so the quarterbacks want to come here. I agree. And having a defense that can get after the quarterback, that can generate plays and turnovers is a big way of doing that. Mizzo9 says, you mentioned moving back from 33 to 38. What will we get from the team moving up? Listen, so what happens, and again, I said this with number 2, I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to draft the edge rusher at number 2. At number 33, I have said this is an interesting pick because it's the top of the 2nd round. Every team resets their deck from day 1 to day 2. Inevitably, there's a player that falls that surprises a team that they want to go up and get, right? So if the Jets are targeting, say, an interior offensive lineman, a safety, that they think that they could get at 33 but could also get at 37, 38, they might trade down. What they could get for that is another mid-round pick, another 3rd or 4th round pick, okay? And that could be where they draft a developmental quarterback. I profiled some of those guys. Or kick the can down the road and get another draft asset, again, in a kind of 3rd round area for 2027 as we continue to accumulate assets. So we shall see. And I think it's really about, is not only a guy that the Jets want there at 33, but is there a big name that has fallen that would entice other teams to try to trade up? Again, I would only do so going down about 3, 4, 5 picks. I would not, sacrifice the opportunity to get at 33 overall pretty much a first round talent and someone you think would be a starter or contributor for the Jets early on. And then QuestDam2879 says, please, Jets, do the opposite of everything that's been done before. No quarterback at 2. I agree. Trade down and get as many picks as possible for 2027. I agree, depending on how far you're trading down, because with number 2, even if you trade down to 6, you need to get a stud. At 33, even if you trade down to 37, you need to get someone who you view as an definite starter for this team and building block. So I agree. Tank and make it obvious. Get the first pick and hit the ground running. He calls it Operation Costanza. I agree with a lot of that. And remember, I don't know about tank, because if they tank, Aaron Glenn's going to get fired. So I don't think that's going to happen, right? But remember, it is a process, right? And I do think I make that analogy to the Detroit Lions all the time. That second year, it's not like they went to the playoffs, but they were on the upswing in that second half of that second year. And then remember, we have the Jets pick, the Colts pick, the Cowboys pick. So if they like franchise quarterback X, whether it's Arch Manning, whether it's Dante Moore, whether it's Lenoris Sellers or others, they would have the ammunition to go ahead and go all the way up to number 1 if they needed to. Let's say it's the Raiders or the Titans at number 1 overall, right? But they're not going to draft a quarterback because they drafted Cam Ward or because they drafted Fernando Mendoza this year, right? The Jets would have the ability to trade we don't know, right? But let's say the Jets pick, the Colts pick, and the Cowboys pick are all between 10 and 20 next year. Let's say the Jets finish with 7 wins and are drafted number 11 overall. Let's say the Colts, because they don't have a quarterback right now because Danny Dimes is down with the Achilles, they finish around the same thing and they're 14 overall. Let's say the Cowboys have a decent year, just missed the playoffs, they're 19 overall. If you have number 11, 14, and 19 overall, guess what? You can package those guys and go all the way up as far as you need. And so that's what I do think is the grand plan, hopefully with a better roster around them. So that'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Remember, if you want to hear more from me, the spitting statistician Dane Martinez, I'm the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on SiriusXM channel 87. You could also catch me hosting in-game live for Sports Grid. I'm helping y'all be better fantasy players, better sports bettors, and plugged in to the Jets. Thank you again so much for the people who have helped me build up this channel. We'll be back here throughout the offseason giving you what you need to get ready and preview the Jets in 2026. But for this episode of Jets Latest, we out of here. Peace.